to Woman On. I'm your host, Maxie McCoy, and this season we're talking to the women and the people making 2020 actually somewhat inspiring. Remember, if you love what you're hearing, there's so much more. There's a worksheet that comes with every episode. You can also join small group conversations twice a week, every week for the season by getting your season pass. You can find out about all of that and then some at womanoncollective.com. My next guest is Jo Encarnacion, known on the interwebs as Go Fit Jo. And damn, has this woman lived. Raised in an immigrant family, Jo started her career as a hairstylist and she worked in tech before becoming a pioneer for radical self-acceptance and sexual wellness. This episode tackles some traumatic events that she went through in her youth, which we don't shy away from because that's where the healing starts. And this conversation about women's sexuality, it feels like healing. I loved talking with Jo about sexual liberation and even some pro tips on self-pleasure. Because growing up in the South, I didn't so much as have a sex ed class to teach me the basics. So you can imagine what kind of mind-blowing learning curve I had when I went to college. The way that we measure and monitor and even prohibit women's sexuality has always captivated me. But honestly, it's angered me. It's encouraged me to explore my own beliefs about women's sexuality. Why did I get sent home from school for my skirt being too short? Why do I have to hide my vibrator? Why did I ask the pharmacist for Plan B in a barely audible whisper? And of course, more general questions like, what do I like? Who do I like? What do I need? How can I move aside patriarchal bullshit and figure out what feels right for me? As you'll hear in my conversation with Jo, it's okay to question what we believe and why those messages are even there in the first place. It's the kind of deep unraveling that leads us back to ourselves. This conversation has dimensions. As you'll hear Jo encourage, we as women have dimensions. There's so much to us, which kind of feels like the ultimate understatement. This conversation will encourage you to explore that and to explore yourself. Here's Jo on owning your sexuality. When we are talking about sexual wellness, which is where you and I are going to just dive into, always like to start with light first.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about what that means, how you have come to define that for yourself?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think sexuality in general is the purest form of human self-expression. And what I mean by that is that it ropes into your identity as a being, how you relate to yourself, how you relate to your others, how you relate to your own body, the thoughts, belief systems, all of those things. So when we think about it from that lens and then we pair that with wellness, it's really all about how do all of those pieces make you feel like a well, whole human being, fully functioning in the world, right? Yeah. So that to me is what I think about sexual wellness.
Do you feel like sexual wellness as a topic is something that we are just now getting to in terms of being willing to talk about it publicly, even though, as you just said, it's one of the key components in making us feel complete, feel whole, feel in our power?
Yeah, I think it all really kind of started off with, the hashtag Me Too movement, where we all kind of opened our eyes and we're like, holy shit, sexual assault and trauma for women and men have been something that we've been dealing with. And we're just barely at a place where we're talking about it. And so I think what happened was, 2017, we started to kind of bring forth the shameful parts about sexuality in a way where the entire world was able to witness it and experience it and then hear from the stories. Yeah. And then from there it became, okay, well, now what does it mean to be a woman and owning her pleasure? What does it mean to be a woman and owning her sexuality? Wait, this isn't just men first now? Okay, this is interesting. So I think we're finally coming to this place in society and culture where women are saying, what does it mean to be in my own pleasure? What does it mean to actually own my sexuality? And holy shit, that's the first new concept for a lot of women.
Didn't know I was allowed to.
I wasn't sure that actually was a part of me.
What does that actually mean? And I'm sure you're going to say it's personal, it's individual to every woman. And if that's the answer, what is it meant to you?
I think for me, there's several different principles, but the three principles that I think I draw to the most is about radical self-love, self-acceptance, and then ownership.
Yeah. Tell us more about both of those.
Yeah. So, radical self-love is like, it's like that deep, deep love for yourself as a being, right? Like, how do you love not only your present moment, but your inner child and all the other things that you might have deemed unlikable because society says it's unlikable. And the self-acceptance piece is really all about coming to accepting yourself in that present moment, whatever that might look like, whatever that might feel like, whatever you're experiencing, but having that deep level of self-acceptance, and then knowing that you can accept yourself as you are and also be willing and wanting and desiring change or evolution.
Yeah. So within the context of that change and evolution, one of the things that I have heard you say, and you said it to me, which is that, it's not always about evolving and becoming. Oftentimes, that acceptance and that growth is really about coming back and unlearning and going back to who we are. How are those things interlinked? A return to self and also a self-acceptance?
Yeah. So I guess the way that I see this is, when we're born without shame. We're born without fear. We're born without judgment. We're born with so much innocence of just being able to touch your own body, express yourself in your own body, speak openly about your needs. And then all of a sudden throughout your lifetime, you're told, don't talk about your feelings, your emotions, they're not valid. You're also then told to, not love your body, not like your body. You spent all this time as a woman changing all the things about yourself just so that you could fit into a box.
Yep.
And so I think this idea of remembering is going back to that initial, what I like to refer to as like sexual innocence, that innocence of just inviting exploration and play into your life.
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like? And so much of us don't really know what that means.
Yeah.
But I think there's this essence of remembering that part where things were just joyful and innocent and pleasurable and just full of life.
It's you can feel that when you think about who was I when I was 5 or 10 or before the world told you that whatever sexual feelings, whatever was going on as a human became wrong, quote unquote. Like, why the F does it all have to become wrong?
Yeah.
For you, in your own journey, when did you start coming to a place of that return? What did that process look like? Was there a big light bulb moment, or was it just this like kind of small steps over time?
I think I've always been on a journey of returning back home from even when I was younger. I remember, so I'm a daughter of immigrants. My parents were born in the Philippines. I'm the only American born child in my family here. Okay. In my entire family, actually, for my parents' side. Wow. And so because of that, I think I've been in this, what I like to refer to as like third culture child. I'm a third culture kid. So I'm in between two cultures. I'm in between my parents' culture and I'm in between this American culture and trying to figure out where do I see fit in between the two while honoring the past. Yep. And so because of that, I've pretty much been pretty rebellious about the ways in which my parents have brought me up.
You're like, nope, sorry about it.
Yeah, that doesn't work well for me.
Yeah.
My parents would tell me things like, you're too dark. Your brown skin looks like this. You need to pinch your nose more to look more American. You're too fat. You're too skinny. You're too this, you're that. You have to have a certain hair texture to get married, and you need to become a certain thing. And I just was like, this is too much for me. I just want to be myself.
Have you found,
what that looks like.
Is that something that you have found forgiveness in? Are you able to see that what your parents kind of projected onto you for what it is or was versus holding resentment in those family relationships? Because I think it was actually a conversation that a woman I was talking to this morning brought up about all the things her mom says to her as a Black woman about her hair and her skin and these various things. And we were laughing about it because she was laughing. But I just wonder what that process has been for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny. I was thinking about this on Monday, and what kind of got me there, so the several aha moments in my life was, there was a moment in my life where I attempted suicide right after a rape when I was 15. And so a lot of that, what led up to that was, my parents weren't emotionally nourishing and nurturing to me, not because they didn't have, and it wasn't because they didn't want to be. They didn't have the skills to, and they weren't taught that.
Yeah.
They didn't know how. That's not a thing that they were taught in their culture. And so the suicide attempt was honestly my second chance in life and almost my rebirth, right? And so that gave me...
And you were 15?
I was 15 when that happened. And so that, I was 15 when the rape happened. I was 16 when the suicide attempt happened. And so that was the moment of like, pretty much like coming home to me. Like, what does it mean to come home to me? And what does it mean to also love, honor, and respect the mistakes or faults or lack of that my parents weren't able to give? Because it wasn't that they didn't want to, they just loved me the way that they knew.
Yeah.
They didn't know. And yeah, I think that has been kind of like I always say I can love people at a distance, because there is this part where unconsciously we do cause people hurt and pain. We don't realize it. It's just an unconscious thing.
Yeah. It's not happening on purpose. So when you combine what happened to you at 15 between, the rape and the suicide attempt, and then you fast forward to a year like 2017, when the Me Too movement was happening, we're experiencing a massive shift in cultural conversation and awareness around sexual assault, sexual trauma. But a lot of the conversation happening at that time was also about, women who had gone through something similar in whatever version of that being for them, and whether they had been healed or are still in the process of healing, which we know that it is, that year was actually very triggering. Did you notice that for you? Like, what were the unique challenges that such a cultural consciousness actually, while it was good, might have caused, some friction for you?
Yeah, I know for me during that time, I was like, do I share my story? Do I talk about this? And also, if I talk about this, what does this mean? How does this look like to my parents? Or like, what does this mean for my culture? Or do I have shame and guilt against like them also? Because it wasn't anything that we processed together as a family, And so I remember feeling called to share. And then I was also feeling really nervous about sharing, just because what would it mean for my family to know these things? And then I remember a lot of people just like, saying to me, oh my God, you're such a strong person. You're this, you're that. I'm like, God, if you only knew.
Because did you share? Did you end up choosing to share?
I shared it later. Yeah, I did share it, or I think around that time, for sure.
And did you tell your parents before you shared? Is it something that you tried to process with them, or you're just like,
No.
I need to do this for me?
Yeah. The suicide attempt was a beautiful experience for me because it got me to therapy really early on and really quickly, and intense therapy. And so I processed a lot of that on my own through therapy. And it was great because I was able to get the tools there. I think if I had told my parents, knowing them at the time, and even still knowing how they are now, it would have been, what did you do? Why did you put yourself in that situation?
Oh.
And I just didn't need to hear that. Just was like, I don't want to hear that now. So it was just one of those things where I'm gonna take this and like process this with myself on my own. We've tried to talk about it lately, and I could see the guilt they have as parents of like, I wish I was there for you, especially my mom. And I said to her, nobody needed to be there for me. This was not your journey. This was mine. And as painful as that is, I'm actually really thankful it happened.
Yeah. And
really thankful it happened.
That answer is so beautiful. And also it reminds me of what you said in the beginning of this conversation, just around ownership. Like it is your journey. It was your journey. It continues to be your journey. So when you look at that, like having, now you're in a place where you're processing, you're even having the conversations with your mom. We're 3 years past the Me Too movement, even though we're not past it. We're just past that, the big mountain of exposure, I would say. What has sexual liberation and your ongoing sexual wellness journey looked like in the past few years?
For my own journey, what happened for me was honestly in my relationship with one of my partners, there were just experiences between he and I where he would talk to me and it was about in just, light conversation and sometimes just minor conflict. He would say things like, well, you owe me sex. You're my partner. And I'm like, wait a second. Why do I owe you sex just because we're long-term partners?
Right.
And so there was a really deep unraveling that needed to happen during that period of just like, why is this messaging there? And then it became you go down the rabbit hole of decolonizing thoughts, right? So we started to decolonize those things.
It's a long rabbit hole.
Unpack that. But I think for me, what was the intention and the impact that I wanted was I didn't want my daughters to grow up in a world where they felt ashamed about their bodies and about their sexuality. And I didn't want them to grow up feeling confused about what consent meant. I didn't want them to feel like they had to give up, their bodies when they weren't ready. So a lot of it was what is the work I need to do for me so that I can pass this on to my kids. And they have the tools and conversations, and then also the relationship with their mom so that they can come to me with these conversations. That are so sticky to have.
And they're so sticky. Do you ever find that even though you are in a place where you are coaching people around sexual wellness, the conversations that you're diving into can be difficult, they can be taboo, they can be things that people have never actually vocalized out loud. Is there anything that you find where like old patterns, old mindsets, old shoulds or come up for you in conversations with your daughters? Do you ever kind of lock up, or has it all been natural?
I think lately it's been pretty natural these days. I mean, it's really funny because like these days there's like vibrators on my bedstand. There's like everywhere. And, they're not weirded out about it. They're probably like, oh, God, there goes mom again. But, at the same time, I think to myself, I'm glad that they don't feel weird about this.
And why do we to begin with? I'm like, we are all made from sex. Totally. What is going on?
Right. And, one of the best things I heard from one of my therapists when I was working through my own work of, well, maybe something's wrong with my body because I need a vibrator to orgasm. Right. And she sat me down and said, what's the difference? Like an orgasm is a simple bodily function, just like it is for you to see with your eyes. We don't shame people for having to use eyeglasses to see. Why should we shame women for having to use vibrators? And I was like, a
woman to that. Your mind is blown. I remember when I was in college, I started taking women's studies classes and I was in the vagina monologues and, on stage in full body leather, 5-inch heels, doing 20 different types of orgasms for that final monologue. And I remember through that process and I'm Southern. So it was the first time where like, those conversations were literally on stage. And I remember somebody saying like sex for women doesn't always have to be hands where you can see them. Like if you are in a hetero relationship, or even if you're not, like you can be doing things to yourself in order to orgasm. And that is fine. There's just like, it was my similar like vibrator moment. Like, oh, this is actually... Got it. And then I told her 20 with my best friend. I'm like, oh, you haven't had an orgasm yet at 20? Let's figure this out.
Let's help you out on that one.
Let's help you out. But I
think that I try to teach them, which, was hard for me to, I think, relate to later in life. It was something I've always believed in, but because of social conditioning, because of what we're taught, because of everything we watch and witness, it's one that I kind of tucked away. But I have a belief that you can have sex without love, and you can have love without sex. Mm-hmm. And I want that particular framework to be a part of their being, because I would never want them to feel pressured to want to have sex with somebody just because they love them. Yeah. That's their body. Yeah. And then vice versa. If they want to explore sex but without love, by all means, men have been doing it without a permission slip for a long
time.
Why do women need to have a permission slip?
Yeah. And just knowing, that you have your own unique blend of those two, like if that's a scale, like you could be over here and over here and somewhere in the middle. And I remember looking at a few of my girlfriends who could have sex without any kind of emotional attachment. And I remember being like, I'm going to try that. Yeah. It did not work for me. And I'm like, oh, right. This is probably just like in my own unique attachment, anxiety, whatever blend that is true for me. But, I think having people around you or coaches or therapists to even allow you to explore that. It's powerful. So I want to take you back to what you mentioned in terms of one of your partners. So you are in a polyamorous marriage.
Yes.
Can you tell everyone what that means exactly, and how you came to it?
Yeah. So polyamory is basically the overarching definition of polyamory.
It's the big umbrella term.
Yeah. Well, right? The bigger umbrella term is like non-monogamy.
Yep. Okay.
That's the one
umbrella
term. And so polyamory is the belief and or practice of being in more than one romantic and intimate relationship at a time. Yeah. And so how I came about to this is I have for a long time never believed that one person can satisfy all your needs. Mm-hmm. I just think that's too much pressure on one person. Mm-hmm. I also think it's a load of shit. So it's just not something I ever really believed in. However, any time that I talked about it in my early 20s and my teenage years, I was immediately slut shamed. Mm-hmm. It was shut down by girlfriends, and it made me feel ashamed to have these thoughts. And they were so innocent at the time. It was like, I don't understand why men get a permission slip to be able to have sex with multiple partners, or that idea of having that, and it's excused because of their sexuality. Yeah. But women are not, and like we're ashamed for wanting to even entertain the idea of that. Yeah. So that to me felt just out of balance.
And with men, it's like if men are doing that and they want a polyamorous marriage, lifestyle, partnership, whatever, it's like, it's fine. And with women, there is judgment versus just allowing it to be like, cool, that's not what's right for me, but it's right for you. And that's right for you. I don't understand the judgment everyone brings to choices someone else is making about their own life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have been under like a heteronormative and dichotomous framework of relationships for how long now? Forever. A very long time.
Not actually forever, but
for a long time. Yeah. And, it's really funny because polyamory is really kind of the idea of like community, right? And so tribal culture has been polyamorous and in these types of like relationship structures for a very, very long time. Yeah. So it's not new. Nope. It's just, we've never talked about it. It's just behind closed doors all the time because of like a Puritan culture around sex, right? So how I came about to that was really hard conversations with my partner about these truths about myself, about what I believe in and what I thought was true to me, and what I felt deeply was true to me. And so we opened up our relationship 2 years ago, actually. So I'm currently in a relationship with my two partners, one that I've been with for 18 years and the other that I've been with for 2.
Yeah. Yeah. And how has that been an expression of sexual wellness and also sexual liberation for you? How do those two go together?
Well, I think with the entire liberation part, it just allowed me to liberate my thoughts and feelings about sex
Yeah.
and relationships, right? So like
Yep.
even that, and then to also just be able to be like, to own that thought of, I really love having sex and I love being loved and I love getting it from all different angles. And there's absolutely
Yep.
nothing wrong with that. And I
No,
have
we
an
need
immense love
love
to
so
give.
much. Love is
Yeah.
good. Love is
Yeah.
good.
And also like I need an immense amount of attention. It's just how I am.
You and Figgy, she also needs a lot of attention.
So, I think that was part of the liberation part.
Yeah.
And
But was that hard for you to own? Like, you said it so in your power just then, like, I need a lot of attention. And I know for me, it took me a long time to own, like, I need affection. I need physical touch. Love languages was kind of the first place that I was able to have a language for that structure, because I was always just like, I'm fucking needy. Like, and I don't want to, want to be needy. So I was, just like squashing all of my needs until I realized, oh, there's a difference between having needs and being needy, even though I don't agree that we even label women as that all the time. It drives me nuts. But was that hard to come to a place where you're like, I just need attention, y'all? And this is the structure that works for me.
It took a lot actually. And I had to do a lot of my own inner healing on the word need. Because even my mom used to teach me and tell me that if you need people, you owe them something. And so I very much was like, oh my God, well then I can't ask support. I have to do everything on my own, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And so it wasn't until my second partner, he was like, hey, you're a human being and you have needs. Like that is part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm like, oh, right.
Turns out.
That's totally natural. So it was then when I literally had to unpack also why do I have a hard time expressing my needs? Why do I have a hard time asking for support? And it went back to my mom's message and I was like, man, I got to reject that.
It is. I mean, isn't it?
Reject that.
It's hard. So what I'm curious for you is how do you walk the line in relationship, right? There are things that we do and we compromise on because we are committed, we are in love, we are in partnership. Okay, there's that. And then there is not honoring those needs and not standing in our power, in our sexual power, in our, just individual power. And for me, I'm also often trying to figure out, like, am I compromising because this is the right thing to do? And it's what you do, or am I compromising self? And I'm curious how you navigate that.
Yeah. So I talk a lot about what, like, coming home to the body and embodiment and feeling of embodiment and then listening to intuition. And so with that, when it comes to really honoring self and not abandoning myself, it's getting quiet, getting still, getting really intimate with what is really going on inside of me in that present moment. And it is a practice to get there, right? Yeah. Because so often we want to numb, we want to shove away, we want to move past something, and then we don't want to listen to those things because we want to think logically and then emotionally.
Yep.
But when we get down to the essence of things, what is your body saying? How does it feel? Do you feel comfortable? How is your nervous system? Like, are you able to surrender into that thought? Yeah. The word surrender always comes to me when I think about my truth, because then there's nothing else that is said except for that clear thing.
Yeah.
And it's so clear and it's so quiet and it's so calm, and you just it feels like still water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in the body, it feels like still water as well. Yeah. So that's that to me is like that feeling of knowing when you're abandoning yourself in a relationship, or trying to compromise with somebody, and what does that actually feel like? I also strongly believe that every relationship can be designed to work in whatever which way you want it to work.
Yeah.
You know,
what is the difference though of that being a reality versus that being something that we would like to have? What does it require of the other person?
I think it requires for both people to be open to destroying literally all of the constructs, beliefs, the conditioning of what it means to be a man or woman or masculine or feminine energy in those roles.
Yep. Yeah.
And then to just really truly define what it actually means to work for you too, as two people in your community.
Yeah. Yeah. When you talk about that communication, I know one of the things that you said is communication and self-acceptance are two of the fundamental skills of sexuality and of that, wellness there. So for you in communication, where do you set time with your partners to have conversations about your needs? Do you do it in the moment? Like, how do you balance what might be an emotional or triggered response versus what's actually constructive for you? Do you have any framework that you follow in your own life?
Yeah. So one of the things I always acknowledge is like what I'm currently feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
And the golden rule is that feelings can change. They're not permanent, right? So
they only last like 90 seconds, right?
Yeah. You can have an emotional fit for a second, right? So part of that is like really trying to understand emotional intelligence and your emotional language and what's going on inside. And that takes a lot of practice because, for a lot of women and men in general, like we're not taught our range of emotions.
No.
We're only taught happy, sad, mad, angry, but like there's a whole...
And even for women, anger is not... I remember the first time I realized I was like, I was feeling all of this shit. And I was like, oh my God, I feel angry. And it was nowhere even on the map for an emotion that I was allowed to feel.
Because you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Like how many times are you told when you're a child, when something is wrong, when something is done wrong to you, to not be angry.
Right.
Don't be so angry. And you're like, oh, I can be angry. I don't need to be reactive.
Right.
Angry. And it's okay to be angry.
Yeah. I actually navigated that recently in a relationship of just owning anger, saying I'm angry, and also that I don't want to talk right in this moment because of what spiral I'm worried about going down. And it was one of the first times I've owned anger in a relationship and just been like, I'm fucking angry and I'm also not going to react here. And it was, talk about like that felt like being in your power, like some kind of like liberation of emotion.
Yeah.
But we don't let ourselves.
No. So, I always communicate like what I'm currently experiencing and or feeling. And then if I don't know, I say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And my partners and I have gotten really really, really good about like, what are you feeling? What do you need? Like, what is it that you're feeling? What do you need? And there are times where I'm like, I don't know what I need. And I think the beauty about polyamory or non-monogamy of what it's taught me is that we're not our partners are not responsible to fulfill those needs. Right? We can do that on our own, and we can also communicate what we need so that they can actually be better at providing the needs.
Yeah, totally. I love, your framework for polyamory of being, that not one person is supposed to fulfill all your needs was actually a beautiful piece of advice within the context of monogamy that a friend gave me, just saying basically like, don't expect this person. Like you have girlfriends for a reason. You have family for a reason. You have, these different parts of your community, your village, your tribe, whatever that is for a very specific reason. Why are they supposed to solve all of it? And it's just so true. Like, I don't want to solve all of someone else's shit.
No,
why would I expect them to do it for me?
No, thank you. Yeah. The other thing that one of my partners and I do, we actually do a monthly retrospective. And so we like write down, it's kind of funny and it's silly, but I also think it's so useful because then we get an opportunity to talk about our month, see what our month was like individually. And then offer any feedback to the other person on paper. So it's not like you're yelling or on them for whatever reason. And then you're actually reflecting, because sometimes I think, we want to fix things immediately in the moment, but we're not letting the emotion ride out.
Yeah. Yes.
And if we let the emotion ride out, what does it look like to then just kind of be in a state where, okay, my nervous system is fine and let's just let it ride out, and then we'll deal with it when I'm in a calmer state.
Yep. I am not hijacked right now. Yeah. So yeah, I love that idea for a retro, and I'm just as a words and writer girl, I'm like, my best conversations happen on paper.
Yeah, same.
Tends to happen. If you're anything like me, you love listening to inspiring stories, but then there always is this little letdown at the end of a show, because it's sort of like, well, now what? How do I put anything into action that I've just heard? Well, at Woman On, we're here to solve that. Each episode comes with a free worksheet that you can download to get dirty with all the wisdom and put it in your own life. Just go to womanoncollective.com/worksheet. You've gone through this journey, which I think is so helpful no matter what kind of framework, an individual has for relationships. And you are building a business alongside all of this. And there has, you have experienced your own personal transformation, but you've also been honest about, like, when I have come out with all of, these stories, your own particular interest, polyamory, framework, how you are living your life, which is true to you and beautiful. And, there has been some sort of correlation with the brands that you work with, and maybe less interest, or, just seeing a difference in your business. Can you tell me more about what that experience has been like?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been interesting. I think what's happening still is that, I stepped out of like the traditional fitness wellness space and started working towards what does it mean to be well, fully, wholly, as a whole being, which is understanding. And
hey, we need to take care of these topics that you're considering
taboo.
Do.
Yeah, we totally do. And so I think in terms of like the brand partnerships, it's been confusing as to like, where do I put this woman? Because here she's talking about sex, but talking about it in a wellness perspective, which is important, but we still don't know how the fuck we need to fit that into society. Because it's still so male driven. And then we still have so many women who want to lead in these spaces, but we don't know if we can lead in these spaces because is it safe? The biggest question is it safe?
And what makes it unsafe, in your opinion?
What makes it unsafe is there's still so much judgment and fear around sex. And, if we think about what sex is, essentially it's power. It's an individual's power. It's knowing that an individual owns their own power. And that's frightening for society, I think, for them to realize, oh shit, women can own their power.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And, women can, people of color can, Black women can. Society's scared of that.
Right. Society's scared of minorities owning their power. And I get it, because what if we did? What would the world look like? Could we
a whole lot fucking better?
Yeah, I think so. I totally think so too.
Yeah.
So, I think that is the biggest reasons why we're having such a hard time. And also, like, can we buy into the fact that sex is a wellness aspect and not just sexual health, which is STIs and reproductive health, but like sexual wellness, pleasure and everything else around that. Right?
Yeah. So, you're so right. Like, we're only comfortable talking about sex when it's like down to our biology, or, there's to your point, like an STI, we see those billboards, to get checked, to be checked for STDs. We talk about gynecologists and, but we don't talk about pleasure.
Well, it's crazy because I hosted one of my group coaching calls yesterday. I had a guest sexpert come in and she did a blowjob workshop, right? So here's 9 women talking about their experiences with blowjobs. They love it. They don't love it. Like,
God, I'm jealous I wasn't there.
I was like, I love this first 30 minutes. We're just women who didn't know each other 4 weeks ago.
Yep.
We're so comfortable saying, I fucking love a blowjob. I hate a fucking blowjob. I love being fucked in my face. And I just was like,
this is happening.
yes. Like, if I could only have these conversations 10 years ago, I wouldn't have felt so ashamed about just even talking about sex.
Yeah,
in general.
I know. I was wondering when you were mentioning your girls, and now this is like exactly it, right? Like, what if we had that workshop of some sort? Like I feel like what so many of us end up learning in our 20s and even into our 30s, and for some people into their 40s, there's probably no age limit on it, but we're learning the basics, the building blocks of sex that we are then, because no one's talking about it, going to porn sites and learning from this, like, not reality. Like it makes me wonder what the world would be like if we just educated ourselves on pleasure sooner.
Yeah. We would have different flavors of pleasure.
The world would be more pleasurable.
Right.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't just see pleasure, I think, as just sex. We would think about pleasure as all different areas in our life.
Yeah. And how they're interconnected. So on with the brands that you mentioned and the brand partnerships that you've been working with, you have really taken a stand against being their token influencer.
Yeah.
When did that light bulb moment come on where you're like, I'm being used as a fucking token in all of this, and I'm not standing for it?
It happened. It's been happening, I think, I want to say some parts of 2019, just starting to feel like I'm getting really busy, which is amazing. That's really, really great.
Great.
However, every single time I would ask, like, why did you choose me as your talent? Oh, because we wanted diversity. Oh, okay. So because you wanted to diversify your campaign. Awesome. Like, awesome. And then I had to kind of take a step back of like, well, what does that really mean to diversify your campaign? And then where do I really see fit? And, I think
with no mention of the work that you are doing, the value that you are adding, the topics that you talk, like what?
Yeah. So, it was really interesting because I was speaking on a panel earlier this year before the pandemic happened. Yeah. And I asked, because I happened to be the only Filipino American and woman of color on the panel. And I actually said, out of curiosity, my work has been shifting based on our call. Like, it's no longer fitness, it is self-care, but I'm adding self-pleasure under the umbrella of self-care. So I'm probably going to talk about sex and why that's important in terms of just our overall wellness. And out of curiosity, like, where you guys sit with that? How do you guys feel? And then they actually pulled me aside and mentioned, hey, we know that this is something you're passionate about talking about on the panel, but we'd love for you to not necessarily say that. And I just was like, okay, that's really interesting because we talked about this in our call when you hired me.
Right.
And then, I asked like the $1 million question I like to always ask, why did you choose me? Oh, because we wanted to have a much more diverse panel. And I was like, but you don't have a Black woman on the panel. You only have me as your woman of color. There isn't a Latina representing like her background there.
Queer, disabled. Exactly. There's so many identities that you're just totally missing out.
Yeah. And so when that was said to me, I was like, okay, I'm going to still talk about self-pleasure then.
Because, like, put the gloves on.
Just because I was like, no. That's a shitty answer. And
also, anyone who doesn't know better than to not use that answer.
Yeah. So that was part of it. And then it was just the entire social justice movement of June. Yeah. Like, that was a big ass awakening for me. Yeah. Mainly because it was like, well, the brands I work with have money. And they need to put their money where their mouth is. And so if everyone is like pulling up and shutting up about where they stand with Black Lives Matter, with their diversity and inclusion values, all this shit, it was like, I need to also be in alignment with that. Yeah. What is true for me? Yeah. And in my
you outlined it.
I totally outlined it. I mean, in my line of work, when I worked at the startup company Visco, I never felt like a tokenized woman of color in that company. I was hired for me. And so I know exactly what it feels like to be hired for my story, for my skills, for everything about what I can offer as a woman. And so I think internally, like that's how I knew what was going to be true for me when I show up to work, no matter what.
Because you had experienced it.
I also experienced it. And I also was a hairstylist for 10 years. So before that, who came through my chair? It was everybody from every walk of life, from every story. And I always honored that. Yeah. So deep inside, it was like, this is important to me.
Yeah.
So I did come out there saying what my values were, and it was pretty bold and pretty true. And while I still have a lot of like things in my house to cull through that might not be in full alignment of that, at least moving forward, there are things where it's like, I don't want to work with people who—
and I'm not going to.
I'm not going to.
Well,
plus my two daughters happen to be LGBTQ like plus community, like in the youth.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, one of them has outwardly said she's pansexual. The other one is still in exploration. Yeah. And so as a proud mom, like it's one of those where I'm like, this is important to me.
Yep.
As a mother.
We have to stand in this.
We have to stand in it.
Yeah.
For so many reasons.
For so many reasons. And, you know, when you talk about kind of, you know, there's more places in the house to comb through. Yeah. And I think that's, I really appreciate you saying that, because I do think that sometimes we feel like if we are not 150% in integrity, then we're nothing at all. And in reality, there's a journey, there's a learning, there's a becoming of what true diversity and inclusion looks like in all aspects of our life. Do you ever, because this is something that I don't think people talk about enough, do you ever feel tempted to compromise, tempted to sell out, and not in full, but in some ways? Where does your line, it sounds like it's really clear now, but has it been getting closer to that clear line, or do you ever find internal conflict where you're like, I could do a lot of good here?
Oh, 1000%. Like there is a hard part. Like there's a part of me that's like, oh, can I be the seed that gets planted?
I know.
Can I just be the seed? And if I can just manipulate, and I mean that in a neutral sense, can I just manipulate change?
Yeah.
Then maybe I can do that. So there are definitely moments where I'm like, this might be okay to work with only if. And, you know, one example that I didn't work with was I had this brand and I signed the contract already, and there was like money on the table, money in the bag. Yeah. And I did my research after, and I found that the owner of the company funded Trump's campaign. And I just was like, I can't do it.
Just actually cannot.
Just cannot do it. And, you know, it was a 4-figure project, and it was one where I told my talent team, like, either we cancel my contract, or if I have to continue the contract, I will continue the contract. However, the entire amount is going to be donated to an organization on behalf of their name. And she just was like, I don't know if you really want to do. I'm like, but I kind of do.
I'm going to.
I kind of do. So instead they were like, we're just going to cancel the contract because it's going to be too much. I would hate for you to be that way. I'm like, oh, but fuck, it would have been.
Oh, that would have been so nice to donate in your name. Kind of like my Planned Parenthood and Pence's name every month. Still doing it. Oh man. Yeah. I just appreciate that honesty, because, you know, we do talk a lot about being a values-based business, values-based people, and also acknowledging that it's a journey of getting there and figuring, and also misstepping in order, you know, to get to the more the bigger goal.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I mean, the way that I see it too is like, just fail upward. Yeah. We have to fail upward, right? Yeah. Like, we're going to fail. We're going to make mistakes. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure
be better by doing it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the secondhand consignment sweater is like probably from some other thing, sure. But, you know, at the same time, is me shopping consignment alongside with my value of sustainability? Yes, that is. right?
Yeah.
Is the brand against my value of this? Yeah, it is. But like, where am I putting my money in that?
Right.
It's still secondhand. There's still
Yep.
sustainability. Like, you have to always, I think, always in any part of your life, evaluate your values as they come along in every decision to then see what is going to be the higher value of that moment. And that, I think, is also still living in integrity.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I love that framework for how to live there, because we make so many decisions in a day, and it's not always going to be 100% right, but can we get better by, the ones that we do wrong?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jo, did you ever think that you would be here?
Fuck no. Fuck no. I mean, I laugh because every single time I think about, the work that I do and talking about sex, I think back to like the 15-year-old girl, or even the 20-year-old girl that never talked about it, that was so uncomfortable about it. And I even think about like who I was, 10 years ago.
Can we talk about those people?
Yeah.
Can you tell me who that person is? Both of those people?
For sure. So the woman on the left, that was before my wellness journey began. It was 2013. And the big aha moment for me then was I was unhappy, overworked. I had everything that you could ever desire on paper as a woman, married, 2 kids, a dog, a great job. My husband's business at the time was going really well. And so it's like, you look at me and you're like, why the fuck would you be unhappy? And I was unhappy because I was playing the role of martyr, which was the one I subscribed to from like my mom and my upbringing, of put everybody else's needs around you first and then yours last.
Yeah.
And so taking care of myself, being well, was never something I thought about.
Yeah.
I was 28 years old, roughly about that time. And it was I was 29 going to 30. And that was the first time in my adult life where I decided to start exercising and eating better. And it was so new and so scary for me. And that was a journey.
Yeah.
And then on the right, that was my competing. That was like, I think, my second or third competition. And that woman chased the idea of beauty, and chased I was chasing performance.
Yeah.
I was chasing accomplishments in a different way. So it's interesting seeing those two side by side
in juxtaposition,
because I was chasing for 2 different forms of performance
of the same thing,
but in different ways. Like one was career driven, the other one was like, what does it mean to self-care and take care of you?
I mean, isn't it interesting how we can create the same pathologies but with different reasons?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And, I love both of those journeys because it taught me better. Like, again, failing upward, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think without the fitness journey and that like extreme fitness journey, I wouldn't have known what it meant to be in like my masculine energy of just doing and performing for a right reason.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I was in such my feminine energy. Like, what does that look like to be a woman and nurturing everybody around you? And now I'm like in this place of like, what the fuck does it mean like to nurture me first and then everything else after?
Yeah. And just from top to bottom, owning your needs. So we love asking our guests if you have a recent text message, email that somebody has sent you that's kind of pulled you up by the bootstraps, been inspiring, any variation of the above that you want to share with us?
Yeah. There is this one where she just asked me, in this moment, I ask for you to consider what you would allow your girls to accept from a partner, their life, their business, no matter how much love is present, and use that as your own baseline. And I was like, fuck, that rocked me to my core. Because when you think about your legacy as a woman, right, whether you're going to have kids or not, you are going to be a model example for another young woman. And yeah, another person, another woman, whatever, right? And so how are you going to show up to be that model?
I mean,
and so many of us, I think,
and then reflect it back on yourself.
Yeah, because so many of us, what I've experienced in the line of work that I do, coaching women, is that so many of the women I've spoken to don't have the mother roles that they wish they had back then.
Mm-hmm.
And they're seeing that now, right? And again, it has nothing to do with like the moms not wanting them. It's just their inability, the lack of tools, everything.
Based on their upbringing.
Right, based on their upbringing. And what I always like tell women is like, you can always be the mother you never had for yourself.
To yourself.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
But like all those things you wish you would have received, you can provide that for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Just provide it. It's so beautiful. I'm so grateful for the work that you are doing right now, you know, even in the midst of your own tough year, which I think all of us have our own version of that.
Yeah.
Ugh. So on that note though, what are you batshit grateful for this year or right now or this week?
I am really,
besides your really amazing wallpaper.
I am batshit grateful for honestly having the ability to call myself out on my bullshit and then know when I can rest. Like that has been a really, really tough learning lesson for me. Yeah. And I'm also grateful for really good banana bread.
Send us the recipe. We'll put it in the show notes.
With cream cheese on top. Because
yes, please. Thank you. Okay, last thing we have to know. Who is a woman on the rise that the Woman On community should know about?
One that comes to mind for me right now is Noelle Cordeaux. She is one of the co-founders of Journey Coaching, which is the coaching school that I teach at. That woman, she's a phoenix. She's a phoenix rising, and I love her words of wisdom. She holds space so beautifully for others, and I think she needs to get more recognition than she really is getting at the moment.
Okay, well, we'll include her in all the notes also.
Yeah.
Jo, thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you.
Mwah.
Mwah.
God bless therapy.
God bless therapy. God bless therapy. God bless coaches. God bless people who are willing to help guide people.
Yeah. Which you are one of them. So thank you also for you.
Yeah, of course.
Love what you're hearing. Well, you get to really dive in by joining the 10-week collective, where you'll be put into small groups that meet every week for the entire season, led by one of our brilliant Woman On leaders. They're so brilliant. You're going to love them. We break down the episode themes together every week. We discuss, we learn from each other. It's seriously so fun. And there's some super cozy merch that's exclusive to the collective. That's the Woman On world. We really hope that you'll join us.